everyone, it's Synth Designer back again with another Sound Design Basics video. Today I'm going to be talking about sidechain compression. Now, sidechain compression is not usually thought of as a sound design element. However, I will show you how it's an important aspect of shaping your sounds and how it's used in electronic music today. Now in this video I will cover what is sidechain compression, how to set it up in your DAW, specifically in FL Studio here, and then how it impacts sound design. Before I get started, I just want to say, if you're new to this channel and you're a beginner, check out my previous videos on sound design basics. I have a whole playlist going through some of the wave shapes, how to set up different pads and basses, and just going through the basics for sound design. Also consider going to synthdesigner.com. You'll find free presets and lots of other great material as well. Finally, if you do like this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and comment below if you want to see anything specific in the future. So let's get into it. So I wanted to start off with an example of probably the most common type of sidechain compression, which is kick and bass sidechain compression. In the intro, I played you just the kick and bass of one of my songs. It's actually called Summer Nights and it's out right now on Spotify. You can check the description if you're interested, but that's not the point here. The point is to get into what it actually is. So sidechain compression is by definition when the level of one instrument or sound triggers a compressor to control the level of another sound. Most popularly, it's used with a kick and a bass, but there's a lot of other ways that it can impact it, obviously. But today, in electronic music, you basically always have some sort of sidechain within your song. And the first example will be the kick and bass that I show you. Now, how do you set it up? In FL Studio, say you want to sidechain your kick to your bass. So what you do here is just right-click, and then you would do sidechain to this track. As you can see, they're already set up on the bass and the sub. And I wanted to show you how it actually works. Afterwards, once that's set up, you take your bass and you add, what you could do is add any compressor, but in this case, I use Fruity Limiter because it has a built-in compressor and I actually like using it and it's very simple. So you'd open this up, it would automatically be on limiter, but you could go to your compressor and then you right click and then you would click kick bus. As you can see, it's already attached. So let's play it again and see what's happening here. So as you can see, what happens is the level of the bass goes down every single time the kick hits. Now, depending on your bass and your sub, this might change depending if, say, your kick has a lot of high end, which in this case it does. That's why I have it sidechained to the bass as well, because it's overlapping frequencies. And what happens is if you have the bass and the kick going at the same time, which oftentimes in electronic music you do, they compete for the same space, whether it's in the sub region, especially in the sub region, or in higher regions as well. So what you want to do is make sure that the bass is cutting down a little bit of its level every time the kick hits. So in this case, we have a simple setup here. So what we can do is A/B the compression and see how that would sound without it. So let's just play things. Now you can drive this compression a lot and you can have a huge pumping sound. And that's kind of what a lot of people associate sidechain compression with, that pumping, right? Because what happens is the level goes up and down essentially on the bass very quickly as the kick hits. So that's probably the most common way of using sidechain compression, but it's far from the only one. Now, I actually wanted to show you here, I have another sidechain compressor on the bass as well. That has nothing to do with the kick drum itself. So although sidechain compression is known for having one instrument affect the other, like we just saw with the kick drum and the bass, there's a lot of plugins now that allow you to kind of bypass that connection and are essentially a type of sidechain compression on their own. And I'm going to show you a paid plugin called Kickstart here and see what I'll show you what it does. So why don't we just solo the bass here? And as you can see here, it's only on 59% of the mix, so let's turn it up. As you can see what it's doing here. Every time the bass hits here, on every quarter note, this shape is essentially ducking some of the sound out of the way. And this is super popular in synthwave music, because let's just take this off and see how it sounds. You can see here it's a very basic kind of bass pattern, right? But when it's on, see, that's too much for me. That's why I had it at 59%. Let's put it at 60. It just gives that slight sidechain compression. So that's really a way of giving your sound a new character. It kind of gives that ducking effect, right? Now, this isn't the only plugin that can do this. LFO tool can do it. And I'll show you in a minute as well that different synths can actually do that the same thing. But I wanted to give you an example of what the power of sidechain compression can do just on one instrument without even thinking of the bass drum. So the good thing here is we do have some ducking, which allows the kick to come through more. However, that's why we also had the other type of sidechain compression on, because we wanted it to come through even more. And this doesn't cover it all the way, especially with a mix at 60%. Before I move on, I just wanted to show you one more example of how to use Kickstart here. And this is not a paid promotion. It's just a very easy tool to use. I wanted to show you on the main synth how it sounds. So let's just play it. Again, it kind of gives you that ducking effect, right? Let's just hear it without it, and then A, B. Now you can hear there's a lot of delay and reverb and panning back and forth, so it kind of gives that impression without it, but you could really hear fundamentally how it changes the sound as well. So the last example I want to show you is actually through Serum itself. So not every synth has this option, but that's the great thing about Serum is it has so many different LFO options, right? So I'll show you what I mean here. So let's just play. I have a very basic chord setup here. So what we have here, we have a basic saw on 4 voices of unison. It's filtered. And then what we can do here is just turn on the sidechain option, which is great. So say we want sidechain 1. What does it do? Let's attach this to the filter, turn down the cutoff, and let's see what happens. We get that great pumping effect. And that is definitely considered to be a sound design technique, right? So I don't know if everybody considers sidechain compression to be sound design, but here's a great example of how it is. If we were to turn this off or bypass it, nothing, right? Just a basic sound. Turning it back on. And it's on that 4 on the floor kind of sound. And you could exaggerate it even more. So that can really kind of really define your synth sounds as well. And of course, in Serum, it's not limited to pads. You could basically do this on any sound. The point I wanted to show you is sidechain is really about kind of creating those dynamics between quiet and loud, and also giving your mix some room to breathe. And of course, the more sidechain compression you add to your sounds, the more of a pumping effect it has, right? That's what people mean there by pumping. You can hear the sound opening, closing more and more, right? And in electronic music, that's super popular. It's getting used a little bit differently than, say, 10 years ago, but where it was so obvious, right? There was so much pumping to the sounds. Now it's a little bit more subdued. However, it's still used all over the place. And I will definitely do a future video explaining different ways to use sidechain compression, but I wanted to give you kind of just a general sense of what people use sidechain compression for and how you can get started with it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.